Welcome to the Human Perspective. Today, women around the world are celebrating International Women's Day. I selected this day to do my first Facebook Live because as a disabled woman myself, I know the barriers that we face here in the United States and around the world. My objective doing Facebook Live will be to highlight important work that people are doing in the United States and around the world to advance the human rights of disabled people. Today, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Ortoleva, and thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Today, we're going to be discussing the important work that Stephanie and Women Enabled International are doing. I've had the privilege to know Stephanie for a good number to advance human rights of disabled men and women around the world. Stephanie is highly respected for her vision and her unique ability to work with disability rights organizations, international women's rights organizations. Today's theme for International Women's Day is Be Bold for Change. And I'm wondering if you could share with us, what does it mean for you to be bold?
Well, I really believe that being bold is the only way to achieve our success. So one of the ways to be bold, of course, is to tell truth to power. Sometimes that's extremely difficult. Another thing that I do, which I consider to be a bold statement, is to remind people, especially women's rights activists, that women with disabilities are women too. And of course, one of the other ways that I like to be bold is by coloring my hair purple, the feminist color, something that some people think is perhaps a little too bold, but that's okay.
Today I'm wearing red, and I also have my wheelchair purple all the time because I think purple is a great color and, as Stephanie says, represents feminism. I'd also like to know, Stephanie, could you share with us a little information about why you started Women Enabled International?
Sure. Well, for several years I worked at the U.S. Department of State as an international human rights lawyer, but also as a human rights officer. And I found very often that one day I could work on a women's rights global issue. And then another day I might be working on a disability rights issue globally. But I found that those two issues often did not intersect. So Women Enabled International works at the intersection of women's rights and disability rights to advance the rights of women and girls with disabilities. So another reason is because there are a number of new and a couple of old. Many of those organizations are very small, have limited funds, and also have limited legal support for their advocacy. So we wanted to provide some of that kind of support.
One of the reasons why I wanted you to speak today is because of your vision of working collaboratively with women's organizations. And as you were saying, because many disability rights organizations run by women are small, because they're not receiving the same kind of funding as other women's rights organizations are receiving, but also I think because many of the issues that we deal with, like violence against women and women with disabilities, we know that rates of violence against women with disabilities in the United States and around the world is much higher. And I think, you and I also share the perspective that we're not only dealing with women in the area of violence who have disabilities, but women who become disabled as a result of violence.
Absolutely.
And who then are kind of out there by themselves, neither being supported by women's organizations nor aware of disabled women's organizations. Could you share with us a little bit about some of the barriers that you've worked on within the women's community and progress that you've made to date?
Sure. I think there are two ways that we've tried to address this. I strongly believe that you can't go to a sister organization and say, I want you to work on my issue. Because basically, you want to go to them and work collaboratively on shared issues. Because no one is going to respect you if you come and say, I want you to work on this, but I don't really give a darn about your issues. That can't be the way that we do it. So I think it's really important to be engaged as a disabled woman with women's rights organizations and to make them aware of our issues, but also to find the areas in which we have common concerns, such as gender-based violence, access to sexual and reproductive health, rights to education, employment. I'm also very interested in women with disabilities and the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math, and participation in sports, despite my absurdly low athletic ability. But, it's a very empowering thing. So we've done it by collaborating with women's rights organizations, but also by collaborating with disabled women's rights organizations. And one project that we've instituted recently, for example, is what we call the Accountability Toolkit. And in this, by this document and the trainings that we're doing on it, we're working with disabled women's rights organizations to help them to do advocacy at the United Nations and basically summarizing and outlining international human rights law on a variety of issues, not only with the Committee about the Disability Treaty, but also the Women's Rights Treaty, the Child's Rights Treaty, and numerous other human rights treaties. So that's just one example of the way that we're going about doing that.
And I think it's an important example because I very much agree with you. We can't go to other organizations expecting them to just take on our issues, but our issues are their issues. But because disabled people are sometimes something that regular organizations have not been engaged with, I think toolkits can be very helpful for a very broad audience of people. So congratulations on that work.
Well, thank you. This toolkit will help disabled women's organizations and the trainings that we do to do their own advocacy, but it'll also introduce women's rights organizations to how these issues intersect with one another. And one thing that we did last year is that at the height of the Zika crisis, many people asked us to be a little helpful and to do talking points on Zika, both from a women's rights perspective and a disability rights perspective, supporting both of those areas of human rights, but sort of showing and explaining how they intersect and how you can have a strong position that's women's rights sensitive, but absolutely disability rights sensitive, and especially in terms of things like language and such.
What brings you joy in the work that you're doing?
What brings me joy? Well, one of the things that always really excites me is when I see young women with disabilities empowered and active. That's just a thrill because there's the joyous reason and then there's the selfish reason. The selfish reason is that we really need young women who are and will continue to be our leaders in our movement when Judy and I can't imagine when that day will be, but when Judy and I want to perhaps work less. And that really gives me excitement. It also really thrills me when some of these UN treaty bodies begin a mechanism that you'd never expect. We did a submission to the Special Rapporteur on arbitrary executions. And one of the things she does in her work is, look at instances of human rights violations in terms of killings. And so one of the reasons she responded personally and directly to me, thanking us for her submission and saying that she really looked forward to working with us and she had a few other projects in mind for collaboration. So that was really exciting too.
So I'd like to thank you very much for watching today. I can't believe the time is gone. We will be doing more of these Facebook Lives, and I would also like to say that we will have this Facebook Live captioned within 24 hours. So thank you for joining The Human Perspective, and I look forward to learning from you and engaging with you over the coming months.
And please look for Women Enabled on social media and the internet, www.womenenabled.org. And good day, have fun,
Thanks,
be
Stephanie.
bold.
Thanks, Stephanie.